divisive among both parties, which is one reason not to rush it, to push the top of the agenda right now. I'm kind of upset at the notion that this might push climate change off this year, because if we don't do climate change legislation, I'm ready for that one, George. If we don't do that this year, we won't do it for quite a few years to come.
I thought one of the most interesting things is Senator McCain's stance on this, someone who talked a lot on the campaign trail and has been very vocal about needing comprehensive immigration reform. I understand he's fighting a tight race and a tight battle there, but I thought that was very telling when you go back to how will this impact the midterm elections? Is this about what will happen to that Hispanic vote? Is this about what you need to do in these short-term elections to get the necessary votes? I thought that was a very telling sign that in the last hours he decided to back it.
But the problem, as on my judgment with health care, is that word comprehensive. Instead of making little bite-sized incremental improvements, we have to do everything at once. That's partly because this is all being held hostage by the immigrant advocacy groups in the country. But if we would close the border, guarantee that we were not going to have serial amnesties far into the future.
So put the 3,000 troops on the border, as McCain suggests.
Build the fence, do what McCain suggests, and you'll find that the American people are not xenophobic, they're not irrational on this subject, but they do want this essential attribute of national sovereignty asserted.
And where does the money come from for that, George?
That's a rounding error on the GM bailout.
Sealing the border would be much more difficult than advocates for that idea suggest. It is a very long border, 2,000 miles, George.
We're only talking about the southern border, right? We're not trying to keep the Canadians out?
The southern border.
You're profiling.
They're kind of different from you and me, eh?
And the technology doesn't work that we thought we could depend on, doesn't work nearly as well as its advocates suggested either. So we're talking about people standing up, border guards, National Guard, Army troops on the border if we really want to seal it
The
off.
truth is, in the modern world, sealing borders is a lot harder than anyone imagines. Nobody is able to keep out at least a fair amount of illegal immigration. The Europeans can't, the Japanese can't. Japan is an island, and it's very easy to tell who's not Japanese, and even so, they have a lot of illegal immigrants.
But you can see, to George's point of view, as I was saying to you guys before, when I sent out a message on Twitter about this, and I said to people, what do you think about immigration reform? A lot of the messages I got back were from people in Arizona who say they support this bill because they see what's going on a day-to-day basis. Now, I don't agree with it. I think there is a very dangerous precedent being set. But what it does show you is that more and more states, particularly on the border there, are going to have to address this on their own if we don't take it up as a bigger issue.
I want to get to one other state very, very quickly because we only have a couple minutes, and that is in the next week we're going to have a decision from the governor of Florida, Charlie Crist, who's running for Senate, about whether or not he is going to drop out of the race. The latest Quinnipiac poll shows that the former Speaker of the Florida House, Marco Rubio, would wallop Crist in a Republican primary, 56% to 33%. But if Crist runs as an independent, George, Crist 32%, Rubio 30%, Democratic Congressman Kendrick Meek 24%. Very quickly, isn't this his only option?
No, he could lose honorably, as has happened before with other people, wait 2 years and run against an incumbent Democrat, Senator Nelson. Or, having experienced a 50-point swing against him in about 6 months, he can go off. He's already lost his campaign manager, former Senator Connie Mack. He's infuriated by vetoing an education reform bill to curry favor with the teachers' unions. Jeb Bush, the most popular politician in the state. This is Harry Carey on the part of this man.
Paul, very quick.
This is the narrowing of the Republican Party. The Republican Party has swung hard right. There is no room for a moderately conservative but still middle-of-the-road politician in it. And Charlie Crist has just found that out rather late in the game, I might say.
Cynthia?
You know, his politics haven't changed. He has always worked across the aisle with Democrats. He's always been moderately conservative. But this shows how much the Republican Party in Florida has changed. It's that hug. When President Obama came to Florida to talk about the stimulus package, there was that moment in video where they did a man hug, And that is killing Charlie Crist and the Republican Party.
Alexis, very quickly, how much of this is about the stimulus, about the fact that Crist embraced the stimulus?
Absolutely bingo. To me, this is the perfect example for Republicans across the country who will say, hey, look, I didn't support the stimulus package. Look at what's happening to a guy who did support it. I think that's going to be a big issue of debate here. And I also think the second issue is Tea Party. Rubio, supported by the Tea Party. If the Republicans want to figure out how to embrace Tea Party candidates, here's an example.
All right, well, the roundtable will continue in the green room on ABC News.